Welcome to Industry Champions. I'm your host, Chris Budihas, and joining me here in the studio is Wayne Loveless with OnDefend. Wayne, how are you?
Good, Chris. How you doing?
No, good to see you. Yeah. So a lot going on in the cyberspace, but before we get into that, where are you originally from?
Yeah, I'm originally from Idaho, but I was raised here in Florida, so just down south in Titusville.
Okay. Well, welcome up to the north. I'm sure you're
thanks.
freezing in the winter, so it's funny. People are like, yeah, I went to Miami, and then I went to Jacksonville afterwards in January. And like, it was much cooler. I'm like, it's a very, very long state. So
yeah, almost two different places.
Absolutely. And you were in the military. We talked about this before. So what'd you do in the military?
Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps for the first 4 years that I was in. I actually worked on F-18s, and then it was the mid-'90s .com boom, and I thought, yeah, Delta Airlines, they're not flying Sidewinder missiles. I need a job when I get out. So I flipped over, went into the Army, and got into IT on that side.
Yeah.
That bridged me over into the cybersecurity space.
That's great. So we're going to talk about that. So OnDefend, what is this company called OnDefend? I've heard of it, but maybe not our whole audience.
So OnDefend's a rapidly growing company that's based here in Jacksonville. We do technical assessments and services in cybersecurity for a number of different companies in a number of different sectors. Kind of really focusing on software security, kind of end-to-end build processes, ensuring that the supply chain's intact and security is being translated through that process. Yeah,
we were talking off camera. Though you said, you know, we're down here in Jacksonville. You're not a small company. I mean, you got some capacity, and when I say capacity, you got some high-end clients, right? And you don't have to disclose any names, but you guys are pretty much moving out.
Yeah, we've got a growing client base and a growing workforce. So I've got teams that are scattered all over the United States. We're seeking out the highest level of talent that we can in the field, particularly around doing, you know, kind of in-depth, hardcore hacking red team services inside of some of this the services and the back-end infrastructure.
So that's a call to action for those out there in the audience, or those who know people that are in this space. You're really looking for folks that are, I'll get it wrong because I'm an IT professional, but people that are probably in the high-end engineering, coding, hacking space to take a look at OnDefend and submit their resume if they're interested.
Right. It's a combination of you know, very technical cybersecurity skill set in doing the software decomposition and understanding how things are built and put together, so that you can identify inside of the code where there might be an anomaly or something that could be malicious and exploited. You know, this is how the cyber weaponry kind of works. If you're familiar with the Stuxnet, the first cyber weapon, it was injected right into the Siemens software and loaded right onto those centrifuges. It just needed a particular logic bomb for it to be executed. Right. So
I encourage folks. It's a little dated, but The Perfect Weapon by David Sanger talks. You know, he talks about Stuxnet, but he also talks about other ways in which things can be interjected in your system. And as we saw in the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack years ago, I mean, you can really bring you to your knees for a business. So somebody like you can keep them protected regardless of the size of the company.
And a very sophisticated state level or criminal threat actor, they can inject code in the build process, and that can sit dormant in your environment or on the application or in your systems for years undetected before it's triggered, you know, when they want to do it. There was an attack in Saudi Arabia when I was working there called Trisis, and this was inside the largest chemical plant in the world. It didn't actually get executed because in the process of updating some of the software in the plant, they discovered the malware sitting there, and it was sitting in something called the fire and safety control system. So this is what puts the fire out if there's some kind of damage, right? So if you wanted to catastrophically destroy something, right, start a fire, then turn that system off, and that would have taken that chemical plant offline indefinitely.
That's intriguing. And then earlier you said hospitals too, and I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's called Letters to the President. I know the audience, if they look it up, they'll go, that's very academic, but yes, it is. The podcast very much is. But they talk about subjects that are really affect our society and our government. And the thing they said yesterday, they were talking about quantum, but in the conversation with the interviewee, he talked about the fact that hospitals are one of the U.S. hospitals are one of the highest attacked locations because criminals and others will attack them and then, you know, have some type of ransom to basically unlock their system. So yeah, having somebody like OnDefend to make sure you're protected, it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. The healthcare system is an interesting animal altogether. They have some of the same problems that big energy companies have, or places that have operational technology, OT technology, where the systems that they use have been coded years, decades ago, and are still in use.
Wow.
And so they can't update when the new security requirements come out. They can't constantly migrate the same way like a normal business would.
Right.
So they have to isolate this stuff off, and it makes it just right for ransomware actors to come in there and do their business, right? And you have no choice but to pay it. Otherwise, you're going to lose that patient data.
That's huge. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about. Like hospitals, healthcare centers feel compelled to pay because in many cases, literally, they're in control of the system within the hospital that can take life. So that's huge. So one more question. What's your value? Like there's other companies out there, right? So OnDefend, what's your guys' value proposition compared to your competitors?
Well, we have a couple things. On top of our technical advisory services, which are a premium service that we do provide with some very high-end technical specialization, we also have some supporting software. We have a platform called BlindSpot. It's a breach and attack simulation platform.
Okay.
And what it does, like ransomware you're talking about, we would go to a hospital and we would run the same campaign that a cyber threat actor would end-to-end and determine where something might be misconfigured, where you don't have a detection in place. The things that would allow that campaign to be successful, we could use that to then tune the collection systems and the analytics and the engines and logging to detect that before it happens. So you can get to the detection before it's exploited.
Wow.
And BlindSpot's a perfect name for it because it's what it's doing. It's identifying those blind spots in the environment, and it really enables the CISO and the security teams to kind of button down the hatches. And then we can build as many campaigns in that as we want. So on top of doing the services that we would normally do, we can also run this, and it can be ran nightly. It can be ran once a month. It's something that can happen all the time because you do get drift in your technology as updates are coming through, new software gets loaded. So your build is changing all the time, and that introduces more attack surface. So then the more often you can kind of run the service and tune your environment to it, the better you're going to be.
It's funny. There was a conversation I was in earlier. People are talking about, in what space could you not have technology these days? And I did a recent interview with on a different podcast with somebody, and so Scott Forbes. Shout out to Scott. Former helicopter pilot, test pilot, medevac pilot with the Army, who is the director for safety and standards with Verizon for UAS. But when we looked at drones in the society, the growth is across pretty much any business segment. And theirs are fairly new within reason. IT, it's definitely there. I mean, it's across. So even like somebody saying, well, what about the guy who's a farmer? I mean, you see any form of, like, when I say large, 100-acre plus industrial, I mean, they're using tech in some capacity to check weather, water crops. Check
using drones to spray pesticides.
Absolutely,
So it's an actual space where it's applicable, and cybersecurity could be a big problem there.
Yeah.
You look at I lived in the Middle East for some time, right? And Dubai is launching their robo-taxi services that fly around in the air. That's an autonomous vehicle with no pilot. Amazing. You think about that from a cybersecurity risk perspective. But robo-taxis, I mean, all the things that we're seeing emerge from an autonomous technology space, AI, just presenting enormous problems across every industry.
So, Wayne, as we wrap up, how do people find you and how do they find OnDefend? Obviously, OnDefend.
So OnDefend
Not OnDemand. That's the other thing I watch on TV. OnDefend.
OnDefend. We have our the old school URL, www.ondefend.com.
Okay.
We have social media presence, obviously, on LinkedIn and the professional networking platforms. So we're pretty easy to locate. And right here in Jacksonville is where our headquarters is.
And that's awesome. And you're obviously on LinkedIn too.
Correct,
so I encourage people to connect with you and take a look on OnDefend. A couple things. One, you're looking to hire. Two, the service you provide are first rate. I mean, improving performance. What you guys have done, as I was taking a look at the company in preparation for this interview, is amazing. So, and you're keeping pace with the threat, and you're doing this day in, day out. So, I highly encourage our business owners and other CISOs. It's funny, all these acronyms we have out there in the business community didn't exist, I think, like 20 years ago. They do now. And so, appreciate your service to the nation. Thanks for what you're doing for our businesses. This is awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Great. Hey, folks, check out Wayne and I on LinkedIn. Please connect with us. Share this episode. Take a look at OnDefend, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And if you understood all those acronyms, you understand what OnDefend does after you look at the website, and you're looking for a career pivot or just an opportunity, reach out to them and submit a resume. And maybe you'll be on an OnDefend team soon enough, making sure our businesses and country continue to be safe and secure, even on the internet sphere. All right. See you in our next segment. Live with gratitude.